The lights were already too bright, the kind that make your heart beat louder than your thoughts. The crowd buzzed with that half-curious, half-skeptical energy that fills a room right before something unforgettable happens or fails. From the side of the stage, a thin teenage boy stepped forward, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes scanning the massive theater as if he was trying to understand how his small life had somehow led him here. Before the first word was spoken, before the first note was sung, there was a pause so deep it felt like the whole world leaned in at the same time. If you've ever doubted yourself, ever felt invisible, stay right here, because this moment was about to prove that miracles sometimes arrive in the quietest voices. His name was Miguel, a poor Filipino teen from Cebu, a place of salt air, narrow streets, and dreams that often feel too big for the houses that hold them. Back home, mornings began before sunrise. Miguel would wake to the sound of roosters and passing jeepneys, help his mother prepare food to sell, and then rush off to school with a notebook that had been used one year too many. Music was never a plan, it was a refuge. When the day felt heavy, he sang. When the world reminded him of what he didn't have, he sang louder. His neighbors knew his voice before they knew his name, drifting through thin walls in the evening like a promise that tomorrow could be kinder. The decision to audition wasn't brave at first, it was desperate. Friends laughed gently, some not so gently. People like us don't get golden chances, they said. Even Miguel believed that sometimes. But his mother, tired hands and all, told him something he would carry onto that stage: if your voice was given to you, it deserves to be heard at least once. So he stood there now, palms sweating, heart racing, staring at judges who had seen thousands of hopefuls come and go. When asked why he came, his answer was simple. He wanted to help his family. He wanted to prove that being poor didn't mean being powerless. The audience clapped politely, the way they do when they're not sure what's coming next. Then the music started. The first note didn't explode. It didn't shout. It floated soft, fragile, almost trembling. And somehow, that was enough. Conversations stopped. Smiles faded into focus. As Miguel continued, his voice grew, not in volume alone but in truth. Every lyric carried years of hunger, hope, loss, and quiet resilience. It sounded like Cebu's waves crashing against rocks, like lullabies sung by candlelight, like prayers whispered when no one else was listening. Judges leaned forward. The crowd forgot to breathe. By the chorus, something shifted in the room. This wasn't just talent, it was testimony. Tears welled up in unexpected places. People who had come for entertainment found themselves confronted with a story they recognized: the universal ache of wanting more, of dreaming beyond your circumstances. Miguel closed his eyes as he sang the final note, holding it like he was afraid to let go, like if he released it too soon the dream would disappear. When the music stopped, there was silence, one of those rare silences that screams louder than applause. And then the world broke open. The crowd rose to its feet, applause crashing like thunder. Judges wiped their eyes, shaking their heads in disbelief. One of them spoke about how rare it is to hear a voice that doesn't just sound good, but feels honest. Another admitted they had judged too quickly, expecting less because the world often teaches us to. Miguel stood frozen, tears finally escaping, unsure if what he was hearing was real. Then it happened. A judge stood up, walked to the side of the stage, and pressed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti rained down like sunlight. Miguel collapsed to his knees, hands covering his face as years of struggle, doubt, and sacrifice finally released all at once. His mother screamed from backstage. The audience cried with him. In that moment, a poor teen from Cebu didn't just win a buzzer, he silenced every voice that ever told him he wasn't enough. But the story didn't end there. Behind the glitter was a lesson deeper than fame. Miguel later spoke about fear, about nights he almost quit, about how talent alone isn't magic, belief is. He talked about the power of being seen, of having one chance to show the world who you really are. And as he spoke, millions watching at home felt something shift inside themselves too. If this story is touching your heart right now, don't just watch, be part of it. Like this video to show your support, subscribe to the channel so you never miss stories that remind us why dreams matter, and share this moment with someone who needs hope today. You never know whose life you might change by pressing one button. Miguel's journey reminds us that greatness doesn't come from comfort. It comes from courage. From choosing to stand on a stage, any stage, and speak your truth even when your voice shakes. The world may be loud, unfair, and quick to judge, but sometimes all it takes is one honest song to make it listen. And somewhere in Cebu, as golden confetti fades into memory, a young boy who once sang to survive now sings to inspire. His voice didn't just silence the world, it woke it up. The moment before the doors opened felt endless. Behind the curtain, the noise of the crowd was like the ocean during a storm, loud, restless, powerful. Miguel stood still, his thin fingers pressed together, whispering a short prayer he had learned from his mother. His shoes were worn, his clothes simple, but inside his chest lived a dream that had survived things far heavier than fear. Somewhere out there were thousands of eyes ready to judge him in seconds. Somewhere out there was a stage that could change everything. And right now, in this single breath before stepping forward, Miguel felt like the weight of his entire life was balanced on his voice. If you've ever felt small in a big world, if you've ever wondered whether your dreams mattered to anyone at all, stay with this story until the very end. What happened next was more than a performance, it was proof that hope can rise from the poorest places and still shine brighter than gold. And if this story touches your heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and be part of a community that believes miracles are still possible. Miguel grew up in a cramped neighborhood in Cebu, where houses were pressed together like they were holding each other up. The walls were thin, the roofs patched, and the nights often filled with the sound of barking dogs, distant laughter, and sometimes quiet crying. His father had left when he was young, chasing work that never led back home. His mother became everything: provider, protector, and believer. She sold food on the street every day, standing for hours under the sun, counting coins with tired hands, always calculating what could be afforded and what would have to wait. School was not easy. Miguel was smart, but hunger makes concentration difficult. Some days, his stomach hurt so much he could barely focus on the blackboard. Other kids noticed his old uniform, his broken bag, his quiet nature. Some were kind, others cruel. There were laughs behind his back, whispers that stung more than they should have. Miguel learned early that silence could protect you, but singing could set you free. Music entered his life without permission. It came through a neighbor's radio, through church hymns, through old songs played on cheap speakers during fiestas. When Miguel sang, he felt taller, stronger, less trapped. His voice filled spaces his body could not. At night, when the house was quiet and his mother finally slept, he would sit by the window and sing softly to the stars, imagining they were listening. The idea of auditioning for a global stage felt impossible. Shows like this were for rich kids with coaches and confidence, not boys who practiced alone and hoped for leftovers. But a friend recorded Miguel singing one afternoon and posted it online. The comments poured in as strangers telling him he had something special. For the first time, Miguel wondered if his dream wasn't foolish after all. Getting to the audition was a struggle. Money was borrowed, favors were asked, doubts were swallowed. His mother cried when she hugged him goodbye, slipping a small cross into his pocket. "Sing like you always do," she said. "Sing from here," touching his chest. "No one can take that away from you." Now, standing on that massive stage, Miguel felt smaller than ever. The judges looked confident, experienced, powerful. The audience waited, curious but unconvinced. When Miguel introduced himself, his voice shook. When he shared where he came from, there were polite nods, soft smiles. He had seen that look before, the look that says, "Let's see what you've got." Then the music began. The first note was gentle, almost fragile, like the opening of a story whispered instead of shouted. It carried uncertainty, vulnerability, honesty. The room changed. People leaned forward without realizing it. As Miguel continued, his voice grew, layered with emotion that couldn't be taught or faked. Every word carried his childhood, his struggles, his mother's sacrifices, his unanswered questions. He sang like someone who had waited a lifetime to be heard. The chorus hit, and suddenly his voice soared. It wasn't just powerful, it was sincere. It wrapped around the audience, pulling them into his world. Judges who had heard thousands of voices felt something unfamiliar tighten in their chests. This wasn't just talent. This was truth. Miguel's eyes closed as he sang, not because he was afraid to look, but because he was somewhere else now, back in Cebu, singing by the window, dreaming quietly. His voice cracked slightly, not from weakness, but from emotion. And instead of hurting the performance, it made it unforgettable. Tears appeared in the crowd. Some people covered their mouths. Others reached for tissues, surprised by their own reactions. In that moment, labels disappeared. He was no longer poor or unknown. He was a voice that spoke for everyone who had ever felt invisible. When the final note faded, Miguel opened his eyes. The silence that followed was heavy, sacred. For a split second, he feared he had failed. Then the applause exploded. The audience stood as one. Cheers echoed off the walls. Judges wiped tears, shaking their heads in disbelief. One of them stood and spoke about how rare it is to hear a voice that doesn't just sound good, but means something. Another admitted that they felt ashamed for ever underestimating someone based on appearance. Miguel's knees shook. His heart pounded. He barely heard the words being spoken until one judge stood up and walked toward the golden buzzer. Time slowed. The buzzer was pressed. Gold confetti burst from above, raining down like a blessing. Miguel gasped, hands flying to his face. He fell to his knees, overwhelmed by emotion he had never allowed himself to feel fully, hope realized. Backstage, his mother screamed and cried, clutching strangers as if they were family. The audience cried with them. Across the world, screens filled with tears and goosebumps. In that moment, Miguel didn't just win a competition round. He shattered expectations. He reminded the world that greatness can grow in the harshest soil. But the true power of Miguel's story came after the stage lights dimmed. In interviews, he spoke softly about fear, about almost giving up, about how many times he had told himself his dream was too big. He spoke about his mother's sacrifices, about the hunger that taught him gratitude, about how music gave him dignity when the world tried to take it away. Viewers connected deeply. Comments flooded in from people who saw themselves in him, students, workers, parents, dreamers. People who had been told no too many times. Miguel became more than a singer. He became a symbol. If this story is inspiring you right now, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. These stories exist to remind us that hope is real, that dreams are worth chasing, and that your support helps bring these moments to the world. Miguel returned to Cebu after the audition, welcomed like a hero. But he didn't forget where he came from. He still walked the same streets, greeted the same neighbors, hugged his mother with the same gratitude. Fame didn't change his heart, belief did. He began using his voice not just to sing, but to speak. He encouraged other kids to dream. He visited schools, shared his story, reminded them that their beginnings did not define their endings. I was scared, he told them. But I sang anyway. And that is the message his journey leaves behind. You don't need permission to dream. You don't need wealth to matter. Sometimes, all it takes is courage, honesty, and one moment of bravery to change everything. The world is loud, unfair, and quick to judge, but it will always pause for a voice that carries truth. A poor Filipino teen from Cebu stepped onto a stage and silenced the world. Not because he was perfect, but because he was real. And if his voice could rise from so little and reach so far, then maybe, just maybe, yours can too.